my name is Jimmy Russomano. In this video, I'm going to show you how to do the back squat. So there are a few steps and there are a few different positions that these steps go to that we're going to talk about today. The first position is the starting position. So this is before we've even lifted the bar off the rack. There are a couple steps in this position that are crucial to a good back squat. The first step is obviously grabbing the bar. As you can see in the bar behind me, there are two parts where there's a little silver line in the knurling. And that's where you want to grab. You want to use that as a gauge to how wide you want your hands. Now obviously you want to be comfortable, so it depends on how tall you are, how long your arms are, and where you feel comfortable in terms of where you're going to grab the bar. But you want them to be equal on both sides, obviously, so that we can be balanced. The second part of the starting position is placing the bar in a comfortable position on our back. Alright, so after we've grabbed the knurling, we're going to sweep under the bar and get a position somewhere between the top of our traps and a strong meaty part of our shoulder. Alright, it's crucial because you want to be comfortable as you back squat, because the movement is difficult enough in itself, and then to put yourself to put the bar in a painful or uncomfortable part of your back is just going to make the exercise not as effective as we want it to be. So it's important to have a good position and to keep that position every time you squat. Now the next part, before we've even lifted the bar off the rack, is to have a great elbow position. So we want our elbows underneath your hands and under the bar. Now I'm going to stress this point later, as the elbows can be a great cue to keeping good technique throughout the workout. Still, before we've lifted the bar off the rack, we want to take a big deep breath in, expand our chest, and keep our core tight. That's when we can then extend the hips and the knees and lift the bar off the rack. After this, we'll take 1 or 2 steps back, just so we can clear ourselves away from the rack so we have room to move. And then we're going to place our feet shoulder width apart and with our toes pointed slightly outward. And that's the starting position we want to see. So I'll show you that starting position now so you can get a better idea. And I'll break it down step by step again. Alright, so here I'm going to show you the steps I just outlined for the starting position. As you can see where I'm pointing, there are breaks in the knurling. And these are a great spot to use as a reference for how wide you want your hands. And it's also a great way to make sure that your hands are even on both sides. So being a taller guy, I actually like to put my pinkies right on that little ring. Next, I'm going to sweep my body under the bar and find a comfortable position with the bar resting on my traps. Then I'm going to force my elbows forward as to help me keep a big chest and a strong position throughout the movement. After this, I'll take a deep breath and extend the elbow at the knees and hips and take 1 to 2 steps backwards. I've now placed my feet in a shoulder width position and I'm ready to squat. Now that we've established a good, strong starting position, we're ready to take on the downward phase of the squat. So again, with our toes pointed outward and our feet shoulder width apart, we're going to concentrate on maintaining a flat back and a broad chest, as well as a neutral head position throughout the range of motion. Now as we begin the downward phase, what I like to stress is first letting the butt move backwards. Alright, so we're going to allow the hips to flex slowly and under control, which gives ourselves room for the rest of our body to move downward. Alright, after this you can, and this is only a brief movement, allowing the hips to flex slowly. After this, we allow the knees to follow and control the weight as we move downward. Now, throughout the range of motion, there are several cues that I find really important to helping athletes perform a solid back squat. These cues include elbows, and when I say elbows, and I explain this to the athlete before they're set, I mean drive your elbows forward and under the bar. This helps them keep a broad chest, a tight back, a strong, firm grip on the bar. The second cue I use is logo. So as you can see with the shirt I'm wearing, what I'd like to stress is that this section of the body, so from about the middle of the ribs up, should never be in a different position. So throughout the entire range, you should be able to read that same logo the whole way down, and you shouldn't be bending over. So again, this stresses keeping a big chest, just like elbows does, but this kind of gives them a visual cue that they need to see the logo throughout the range of motion. So whether it's at the top of the squat or at the bottom, they need to be able to read those words on the shirt. So it's great with college athletes because they're always wearing shirts with some type of a logo with their school or with the team that I play on. The third cue I use is knees. So during a squat, it's very, very important that you have a solid base. And what scares me when I see athletes squatting is when their knees start to cave in at the bottom of the squat. So what I stress is forcing your knees outward. Now, it'd be very difficult to actually push their knees so far laterally that they create an injury. But what I like to use knees for is if they're trying to push their knees out, it's actually gonna help them maintain their knees staying right above and in line with their feet. All right, so keep them forced out. I think it helps. It does wonders in terms of preventing knee injuries while squatting. The final cue that I use is heels. So throughout the entire range of motion, whether it's in the descending phase or in the ascending phase, is pushing weight through your heels, not your toes. All right, the NSCA says a squat is complete when one of three things happens. Either the heels begin to lift off the ground, the back starts to arch forward, or the thighs are at parallel. In my opinion, when the heels are lifted off the ground and when the back starts to lean forward, it's probably too late. So I stress keeping the heels on the ground and keeping a good chest position. And when thighs are parallel, that's when it's appropriate to begin the ascending phase. So I'll show you the steps of the downward phase using the bar behind me. Now that I'm going to show you the downward phase, it's important that we not forget the starting position that I spoke about. I'm not going to take you through it, but it's important to remember that we have a strong base and that we have a good grasp on the bar. All right? Now, after we've entered this position, it's important to keep a neutral head. People forget it all the time. Keep your eyes forward, all right? We don't want to stare up at the ceiling or down at the floor. A nice neutral head position, just like an athlete would be using while they're playing their specific sport. All right, so now we have our toes pointed out, our knees about shoulder width apart, our feet about shoulder width apart, and a neutral head position. So first, I'll allow my butt to go back. Now this gives me room to flex both knees and hips. All right, so under control, I'll force my elbows forward, knees out, and keep an eye on the logo of my shirt, and it helps me keep a good solid position throughout the downward phase. Now you can see, as I mentioned, I think it's important that thighs are parallel to the ground at the bottom of the movement. All right, we don't worry about heels coming up, we don't worry about back leaning forward, because we don't want to even put those thoughts in the athlete's head that those are an option. It's important that thighs are parallel because that's the full range of motion of the squat. Now that we've finished the downward phase of the movement, it's important that we complete the movement in as controlled and efficient a manner as possible. So in order to do this, we want to focus on that same position, a strong flat back, a broad chest, elbows staying forward, heels on the ground. All right, now these cues are more important now than at any point in the movement because coming out of that hole, the bottom of the position, it requires a lot of force to be generated to move that bar up against gravity. All right, so we want to stress these cues to create good technique and to prevent injury in our athletes. All right, so we want to have an explosive, strong movement, but we also want to make sure that we're doing the technique properly and that our knees aren't caving in, that we're not coming up on our toes, that we're not leaning forward or shooting our eyes back. All right, neutral head position, heels, knees, flat, strong back. All right, so I'll show you that. I'll show you that movement now under the bar. And when we finish the movement's not over until the bar is racked. All right, and I think a lot of spotters and a lot of athletes forget this. Now, once the bar is racked and the athlete is sure that it's in both of the catches, then they can walk away from the bar. Until then, it's not safe until we know that the bar is racked out properly. So I'll show you that movement now. All right, again, now that we're at the bottom of the movement, it's important that we stress those cues. So here I am at the bottom. Now it's important for me to focus on keeping my knees out, my heels planted in the ground, and being able to read the logo across my shirt while forcing my elbows forward. Good, so you want to stand up in a strong, controlled manner and focus on those cues throughout the range of motion. I'll show you one more time. Now, I'll walk the bar into the racks. I'm sure that the bar is safe in the catches. And now I can finish the movement. So that's the back squat. Thanks for watching.